Rosa, let's talk about your career, because you've had such an unbelievable career in college athletics, working for ESPN for many, many years, your role on the board of governors at the University of New Haven. But let's just start with your career. What was it that brought you to just college athletics and athletics in general?
Well, as a kid, I just watched the games on television with my dad. In those days, we only had the broadcast stations and maybe public broadcasting. That was it. So we didn't have ESPN at the time. But I would watch Big Five basketball games from Philadelphia with my dad and my brothers, and grew up loving sports, played sports. At the time, there were high school sports, but I realized I didn't really rise to the level of the basketball team that went on to Immaculata and won national championships back in the day. But I just always followed sports and went to all the games and went to Villanova. And of course, Villanova had such a great reputation for sports, and started working as an assistant in the sports information office. And I found this whole world of sports public relations that I had no idea existed. And I took it as a temporary job, because at that time, women didn't think of sports administration as a career. One thing led to another. I advanced, I got a couple of promotions, and my boss left in the middle of football season, which would be very challenging. And Villanova, I was the only other full-time person in the office, and Villanova asked me to be acting director. And that's a long saga. They were not going to give me the job because a woman had not done that type of job at that point in time. And the president, an Augustinian priest, overruled, and I got the job. And that then led to a couple of years at Villanova as sports information director. Then Brown University called me, and I was hired there. And we hosted national championships. And ESPN was starting out after year 4 at Brown, and was televising the NCAA Men's Frozen Four. And I met the founder, the producer, and they recommended me to the president, and I landed at ESPN. I don't know how long that took, but that's a quick summary.
No, I know there's just so many great stories in there, but during that time when you first was in that role, I mean, they quickly put you in that role back in Villanova. What was it that you found out and learned about yourself? Because I'm sure you go in there a little bit overwhelmed, like, okay, all right, now time to put the adult pants on here. What was it that you felt, and what was it about it that you had to step up, and how did you do that?
I was scared. I really was scared. I didn't know if I would be truly accepted. And I received hate mail, actually. Why do we hire a woman in this position? And I had many a night of crying and sobbing to my parents. And it was their support and encouragement that sustained me, and my faith. I had a lot of faith. So I was challenged many times and almost gave up, almost threw in the towel. And I had to always remember, this too shall pass. What seems like, a major issue, we soon forget. It soon passes.
When did you find out, and when did you feel that you finally made it? Like, you didn't feel like you were being judged for being a woman in a male-dominated sport? Do you remember that one moment that you're like, nah, I arrived, I'm here?
I think it was when the media, the reporters, started writing about me and the job I was doing. That was public validation, and that praise made me realize. However, what happened, Villanova, Rolly Massimino was the coach, and they had a lot of losing seasons at the time. And I became very concerned, because everywhere we would go on the road, the press wanted to talk with me and not with the team. And here I'm supposed to be doing PR for the team. And I realized after a month or so that I really had to, deflect and move that PR to the team. And I was able to do that through a lot of creative storytelling about players.
The foundation of storytelling is obviously the foundation of ESPN and the Walt Disney Company. How did that foundation, the fundamentals that you learned along your journey prior to getting to that point, the pinnacle, what was it that helped you put your suit of armor on in the corporate world, in the in the crazy world of ESPN and Disney?
Staying true to my foundation, my parents and my upbringing and my education through grade school and high school and Villanova, really staying true to the principles that I had learned.
Were there any mentors in your career? I'm sure you had many of them, but there are any that stand out? And what are some of the lessons that they taught you along the way?
Yes. So there were several men in management positions who helped and advise me. I remember being out of college, being in college and then out of college, I thought, well, leaders, managers should look at what are the issues? What are the challenges that we're facing? And I would go into meetings and I would bring up the issues. And I remember this senior leader at ESPN pulled me aside and he said, Rosa, I don't know if you realize it, but you're always bringing up the problems in the meetings. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, wow, you're right. I am. And my mindset was that was what I was supposed to do. And I learned from that advice, that piece of advice, and it was painful. When someone tells you you're really making a big mistake, thank goodness he told me. I then realized that I needed to say things like, the employees love the new cafeteria and go on and gradually proceed into some issue that needed to be addressed.
Anytime we had to talk to, or we wanted to talk to ESPN, which we did all the time, the name that kept on coming up out of Burbank was, you got to speak to Rosa. Rosa will help you. Rosa will get you what you need over there. And so you were certainly, I would like to say, in a legendary status in your career and what you did at ESPN and with the Walt Disney Company and college athletics. And I would say that we are so lucky to have you as a Board of Governors member at the University of New Haven, Rosa. So in all that you continue to do. Thank
you for that, Rob. That's a really important point. Too often as leaders, people come to us with thoughts, ideas, and we're quick to say, oh, we've tried that before. That won't work. And what I learned was to break that down, because ESPN was all about ideas. And if you didn't listen to the employees and the ideas they were presenting, you could miss something. So I learned to look at things and say, how could we do this? And so when Disney would call wanting us to promote one thing or another, I would say, how could we do it? I remember the movie Hercules was coming out and they wanted ESPN to promote it. And I thought, oh, how are we going to do this? And I thought we had this program called The World's Strongest Man. And I connected the dots. So what you said, I thank you for that. And it was something I had to learn along the way, to be open to possibilities.
There's so many possibilities that you share. How about this segue, Rosa? The possibilities that you've shared for others. Well, I try. And I want to bring on the 2019-2020 Rosa Gatti Endowment Scholarship recipient, which is Lindsay Miller. So how you doing, Lindsay?
I'm not too bad. How about you?
Good. So obviously we wanted to connect you guys together, and we have to do it in this fashion today. But what a better way to do it than in podcasting, right? And the one thing that you are is a communication major. So why not?
Absolutely. I'm grateful.
Yeah, I don't even know what I
speak at all.
I don't even know what I said. It even made sense, but I said it anyway. So Lyndsay, we do have some information on you. You've had an unbelievable career. You're a top student on the deans and presidents list. talk about receiving the scholarship and what does that mean to you as a student athlete with the University of New Haven?
That actually meant more to me than I think it does for a lot of other people. I personally transferred 3 times. So this is my 3rd school, and I changed my major a bunch of different times and all sorts of things through that process. So as I became comfortable at New Haven, getting the scholarship let me know that I was on the right path and that I was doing the things I needed to do. And it was really just encouragement for me in the future.
3 times. We're going to talk in further detail after this. I want to hear more about you. What year are you in?
I am in a junior year this year. I should be a senior, but from transferring, and I play lacrosse, so I wanted to be able to keep a year.
Good. Well, and better that it's this type of year.
Yeah,
and
right.
Next year we can all flourish without the virus.
You're a communication major. One of the goals you said in 20 years, you want to be a vice president of communication for ESPN. So, Rosa, what kind of advice do you have along her career path, and what could you share with Lyndsay?
Good. And I see you as senior vice president of ESPN or some major company someday. Just putting yourself in position. Robin Roberts would often say that from Good Morning America, putting yourself in position. So taking all the courses, learning as much as you can from the University of New Haven, and then trying to get internships. That's probably the best method to work in communications at one company or another, and get that experience. Then you get the references from having worked with the company, and one thing leads to another. So working at Villanova, then the word got out to Brown, and then at Brown, ESPN, one thing led to another. And I think if you just put yourself in position, especially with internships, talk with faculty members who have connections to the major companies that you like. Oftentimes the faculty have contacts.
Well, Rosa, some of the things as far as experience, what would be some of those pieces right now that Lyndsay could do during the summertime, kind of being held up a little bit in our homes? What are some of those soft skills in communication, content creation, distribution that she could do right now at home?
Wow. Many things. Writing is certainly critical. The world has changed as far as writing. And press releases, they still exist, but there's so much social media applications. And so understanding the social media applications, but becoming more creative in how you use them, what you would say, how you can draw people in to your messaging. What I often would do through the years at ESPN, and I never stopped learning, I would look at an issue that happened at one place or another. I would watch press conferences and I would say, oh, I would have done this, I would have said that, and I learned just by observing, and how would I have made that point. So in the midst of everything that's going on right now, you can learn so much by watching, press conferences and messaging, particularly in a crisis. I think you learn more from a crisis, which can be very difficult and very challenging. We learn more from those situations than if everything were very positive. If everything's super positive, it's like, oh, this is easy. But when you go through very negative experiences, and it's so unfortunate for people like you and for seniors, who don't have their graduation, to go through this time frame, well, how you can turn that around and learn from it and become stronger and better. So I would say very creative writing, creative messaging, and speaking. Podcasts, if you have your own podcasts, learning how to present yourself, because the best way is to practice.
Lyndsay, what are some of those challenges that you've faced so far in your career, and how did you overcome them? And going to 3 schools and kind of deciding on, I mean, that's an unbelievable story in and of itself, but how did you overcome all of that to where you are today?
I just focused on my goals. Anytime that I was in a situation where I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, I went back to square one and I was like, what do I want in the end? And then from that point, I just took that and built things to help me go in that direction.
You're so right. And that was such a great question, Rob. You are an excellent interviewer. You had to have gone through challenges to make those changes. And so you are already very, very strong and you're building a good foundation. So you and I will talk further about those challenges and changes, but I'm convinced you're a stronger, even greater person as a result of that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Rosa, with Title IX and the changes that you've seen with women in athletics, especially in leadership roles, what are some of the points and tips that you could give Lyndsay in that regard? Even though times have changed, but how much have they changed? And some of the things that she needs to just think about and be aware of and prepare herself for that next step.
Yes. Some things change and some things stay the same. So there has been tremendous change. And having witnessed when Title IX first came out and having to try to apply it in the environments that I was working within, it has taken a long, long time, decades and decades, to try to get to parity. And I think that we're in a very good place, but there's always room for improvement. And there's, by any institution, any organization, any corporation, educational institution. So I think it's so important that if you as an athlete see certain things that maybe need to be modified, to present them in a positive way, to present, a solution. So if you're a voice that comes in with the issue, as I used to do, but also the solution and positive approaches, or asking, why is it this way? How can we make this better? So I think that certainly the University of New Haven has made major advances, as most educational institutions have, but there's still room for improvement. And I highly recommend that you be part of the team that affects that. Do you have any specific question, Lyndsay, that I can address? That's more of a general comment.
Well, honestly, I was going to ask questions more related to about advice you had for me because I know you faced a lot of obstacles when you were going through your career path and things like that. So I was going to ask you things related to that, but Rob kind of already covered that because, like you said, he asked some great questions. So
yeah, I'll tell you, I didn't say this, but my first 6 months at ESPN, I thought I was going to be fired. And so whenever you make a change and you go into another environment, you can I was in tears many a night. And people will talk about, well, women in tears and so on and so forth. Men may get angry and manifest their emotions in certain ways. For me, tears are, I think, God-given. And so occasionally I rarely had tears running down my face in the workplace. That was rare. I do that at home. But there were times that I would show emotion and my eyes would well up and I'd be like, oh, I've got to control this. But I would, and I would speak up, that I was upset about something. And here's why I was upset about it. And I remember one time telling a boss said to me, Rosa, don't get so emotional. And I said, I'm not going to mention his name. I said, I am emotional, just like Jack in sales bangs his fist on the desk. He's emotional. I'm emotional. And so I flipped that back, and it was sort of an educational moment. So there's many stories, and I had to learn along the way. And I read and read and read, and I read books about women in the workplace. And so things have just improved tremendously. And you have a lot of camaraderie and teamwork today, and a lot of And there have been occasions where women didn't support me more than men. And those were very challenging moments, because I think we all need to support each other. And we're learning that now during this pandemic.
Hopefully that's something we take away. Positive.
Yes. Yeah, try to be positive. You know, there were a few days where I go, oh, I can't believe this is happening. And then I would say, wait a minute, get over it, Rosa. Think of those healthcare workers walking into those hospitals every day. Get over it.
This is really interesting to me, though, Lyndsay, because we would love to hear your perspective on what are you going through right now, thinking about the industry shutting down, thinking about your season not happening this spring. How are you personally staying positive, and what are you thinking about the next 3, 4, 5 months? Are you thinking about just getting back on campus and just wanting things to be normal again?
So when all this first started, I actually saw a quote on social media, and it said, all of your hard work wasn't for nothing. It just wasn't for now. So that's really what I've been using to get myself through this, knowing that everything that I'm doing and that I've done isn't for nothing. It's just not for right now. And I know that when the time comes for it, it'll be all worth it, or at least that's what I'm hoping.
Great. Good. I think you learn sometimes without even realizing that you're learning. I remember a woman who was working in my office, and I was so busy I couldn't spend time with her. And she said, I apologized to her, and she said, oh no, I'm learning by osmosis. I'm listening to your phone calls. And I'm learning just by listening. And so you're listening to everything that's going on around you, whether it be online courses or the media or what have you. Because just think about all the systems improvements that are happening as a result of this at the University of New Haven, in the government, in states. There is all this new software efficiencies of the way we work. And so I think we are going to come out of this as painful, especially for those who have been lost and their families, as painful as this is, we will come out in a bigger, better way.
Well, you know, the 2019-2020 Rosa Gatti and Scholarship Endowment recipient Lindsay Miller, thank you for your time today. Rosa Gatti, as always, the legend over there. Rosa Gatti, thank you.
And our future leader, who will be wiser and better than I ever was.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, folks like Lyndsay, and now, you know, soon to be alum in another 18 months or whatever. We're proud to have you and call you a Charger, Miss Miller. So we thank you for your time today as well.
Thank you. And I wanted to thank you both for setting this up and taking the time to do this with me. I took some really good advice out of it, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Great. And Lyndsay, don't hesitate to email me, and we'll do a follow-up phone call, and we'll meet in person sometime soon.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
Okay.
On behalf of Rosa, Lyndsay, and this is Rob, you're watching Charger Nation Network. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Rob.